Well, good evening and welcome to this Wednesday, December 2nd edition of the Island Stats Sports Show. Joining me as co-host, Juggling Jason Ford. I'm your host, Earl Baston. And tonight we'll be joined by Macy O'Dill from the Department of Youth and Sport, as well as Craig Brown. Craig Brown is a therapist in the physio field, has a wealth of knowledge, and I want to continue a conversation that started on Monday when I hosted Referees Corner, Jason, and I spoke to the head of refereeing, Mr. Brian Hall, for CONCACAF, who's on a panel that is looking at the doing a study for substitutions when it comes to head injuries. So we want to be able to talk with Craig Brown later this evening at the bottom of the hour to discuss what we should be putting in place as far as from a medical and physio part to ensure the safety of the players as we get into a game and the game becomes a little more physical, a lot faster, as Brian Hall indicated on Monday. But let's talk a little bit about local sports. What a weekend we've had. As you know, the Shield and Friendship were the Friendship were played. The Shield, those round matches, the quarterfinal matches will be played December 20th. But the Friendship matches, we saw Dandytown Hornets go down 2-1 to Devonshire Cougars. We saw Robin Hood defeat Somerset Trojans 3-1 in extra time. And we saw Southampton Rangers edge Somerset Eagles 4-3 after extra time. And as we know, Southampton Rangers are the defending champions. But when you heard those results, what were your thoughts?
Once again, Cougars looks like Cougars has Towns number right now, even though Towns is carrying a lot of injuries. But the confidence has got to be high. Those guys down there. And for a lead there, obviously, that would have been the marquee match. But when you look at the Southampton Rangers and Eagles match, who saw that coming? So I'm not sure if if I was Rangers, am I confident? I mean, you're happy that you won, but are you confident? And then if you're Eagles, you was in it. You know, so it's a mixed bag right there. And then the other game is these Somerset Trojans. Now that was interesting because you had mentioned a late transfer to Somerset Cricket Club. I got to see him the other day. Alan Douglas. Mm-hmm. He was tired Sunday. Did he play 120 minutes? When was the last time he played?
let me just say, Juggler. When he was warming up, it just didn't look right. it just did not look right. One of those things.
Hold on. Let's tell our audience why? Why? Because he's worn many jerseys before. Why did it look right this time, Earl? All the jerseys he's worn.
You know how some people colors look good on them and it stands out. That mixed match colors did not do any. No.
You might have found himself a true home now.
What's that?
You might have found himself a true home up Somerset.
Even you're laughing. Even you were laughing. But yeah, so that is hilarious. That is hilarious. Yeah. You can't even stop laughing for that.
Yeah, I'm just saying. Sometimes you got to move around to see where you fit. And I think he could fit well up Somerset.
It didn't work Sunday, and we can't see it working anytime.
Oh, he lasted the whole 120 minutes.
Huh?
If it was that bad, they would have pulled him off the field. Come on now.
But they had to make an early substitution due to injury, so it might have scuttled their plans for that.
You had 2 more to go.
Hey. You have to hold there sometimes until you need them.
No, but go ahead.
And this might be, I'm going to make you suffer all winter so you have nothing in December.
You could try that, but it's two different sports, bro. After I can't even say because your club's been struggling in both sports for a little while now.
Right, yeah.
I hate to say it because we was down the east side last week, so I hope to go back down there and visit some people down there. But no, realistically, I hate to say this. I'm just thinking about it now, Earl. You look at our cup match clubs per se; they've both been struggling in football and cricket for the past few seasons.
Right.
I couldn't tell you when the last time they were dominant in either sport.
Yeah.
Oof.
Well, I mean, some would argue in the shortened season that we had in cricket, had it not been for that one defaulted game early in the season, the league might have looked a little different.
So well, that's something. But Somerset had an amazing year. But I'm sorry, Kamal Lemrock had an amazing year.
Yeah,
him and Chris had an amazing year. But yeah, I mean, football wise. But you know what? There's so much rich history in those two clubs when it comes to football, and just to know that they can keep putting out teams to be competitive. Those clubs and the management. Which was one of the games that you may have been a surprise for you, though?
Not really a surprise. Well, I was surprised at the amount of goals that were scored at Southampton Oval, because both teams have been kind of struggling in scoring, but both teams have also given up goals. I mean, Rangers scored 4 against North Village and have struggled to score 4 in 3 games, and then you look at Eagles, they've been leaking a lot of goals, but they found a way to get 3. So, this coming weekend, it's all important for them and their opponents in Georgia's Colts at the Wellington Oval, because, it's crunch time now and you don't want to fall too much further behind. A draw is like a defeat for both.
Yes.
A victory for St. George's gives them a little bit of space to say, we can, get closer to a victory for Somerset Eagles actually kind of puts everybody in the mix. So it's a very interesting weekend for those 2 teams in particular, as well as Southampton Rangers are taking on Somerset Trojans at Southampton Oval. So
yeah, that's another big game. Now, you talk about Southampton Rangers and, another late transfer, the goalkeeper.
Yeah.
He came from Somerset Eagles.
Yeah.
So that had to be a lot of ribbon on the day. But no, you're saying that we spoke about these teams off air. If Crossroads obviously taking on, I believe, Robin Hood this week.
Yeah.
You would probably expect for them to go down, and hopefully not to a heavy defeat, because it might come down. I mean, could be coming down to goal average.
Yeah, so true. So true.
So it's going to be interesting with 3 teams going down. Going into the break, you basically just want to get everybody back healthy. Now, what happens during the break? Because I don't think these teams will be included in a lot of the, during the season games. But to get these guys back healthy, get them back motivated, because, and I know teams are in that position at halfway in the season.
Mm-hmm.
You come back out by the end of January, so you would have played about 3 games?
Yeah.
You have not secured a point. Also, training sessions become scarce, if they're already scarce already.
Right.
The coaches' words come null and void.
Yeah.
So then it comes to a point of, do I feel like going to get a kick?
And that's what it comes down to. Well, it's 8:10. We're going to bring in Maceo Dill from the Department of Youth, Sport, and Recreation. Good evening, Maceo. Thank you for joining us tonight. I just wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about the Department of Youth, Sport, and Recreation and what your role is within the organization and how it functions throughout the island, because I think a lot of people have a misconception of what the department is responsible for. Some people honestly believe that they run sports throughout the island. Can you just give us some insight as to what your role is at the department and the responsibilities that you have to do that is under your remit?
So, first of all, thank you, Al, for the opportunity. For me personally, as the sports development officer, what that role entails is me regulating funding that goes out to national bodies. So let's just clear up youth and sports, running sports. No, it's the national body's responsibility to run and facilitate sports. The government funds these national bodies based on the requests that they put in and for funding, and we regulate that funding. The other part of my role is to partner with the national bodies to see how we can further develop sports and make sports more relevant in our community. So when we look at sports as a whole, and it's time that our country sort of what we're looking to do is create a sporting sector in our country so we can influence the growth of our citizens. So we have to start looking at sports from just the actual sporting event to see how it grows our people. So we have to start telling that story as to how sports can grow our people in the country. For instance, as it relates to other countries, I travel to a country like Zurich every year. And while Zurich don't have any top athletes, sport is the tool that creates a healthy lifestyle for them. And this is what we're now, as a country as a whole, starting to learn to do. Um, for the most part of it, what we use as the language in our country is that our athletes punch above their weight. So it's now time for us to move to punching above our weight to build a sustainable sporting environment and sporting programs. A sustainable sporting environment looks like financial, looks like infrastructure development, looks like healthy lifestyles, looks like resolving social ills. So we're looking to partner with our sporting bodies, and just as it relates to the sporting bodies, we have 26 national sporting bodies. There's obviously cricket and football being the biggest body because of the people that it serves, but we go down to archery, that's a sporting body. We have rugby, that's a sporting body. We have track and field, that's a sporting body. Swimming, that's a sporting body. And now one of the fabulous things that are happening with the sporting bodies, they are actually collaborating as one. They're collaborating with the national sporting body to start to have the conversation about sports and how do we grow it and sustain it.
When you guys are going over the details of what sporting bodies are putting in for their yearly, what we would consider grant, and their request plans for how they want to develop their sport, how much in detail does these national sports governing bodies have to fill out in order for you guys to kind of dabble down and say, okay, this is possible, this is unrealistic, and this is manageable?
Well, just let me make a correction as to the word grant. The word grant is something that we're historically used for the last 20 years. We have now changed that to a sports investment program. And the reason we're changing it to the sport investment program is because we want to invest in sports with a maturity in insight. So psychologically, we want to go from that this is a grant for you to have a grant to go here to sports. We want to invest. The areas that we're as a government that we're looking to invest in is high performance, junior development, and coaching development. So those three areas is what is felt is how we're going to sustain our national bodies. Because obviously, to sustain them, we need good coaches, we need good junior development programs, and then we also have the high performers that perform at high levels. So that's where the sporting bodies are investing, filling out their actual investment application in those three areas. And we're now starting to graph how much we're investing in. So for instance, what does maturity look like in an investment? So if we're invested in a sporting body or a sporting person, how many people are you serving? Do they go on to represent Bermuda? Do they give back to the sport? So that's what now investment and maturity, and how are they performing? How are they performing? So they are now starting to provide details along those lines is when they're making an application. And keep in mind, a lot of the sporting bodies are volunteer based.
Yeah.
So it becomes an education for them as to sustain in their actual organization to grow it to the next level. So this is what our partnership with our sporting bodies we're looking to develop it into.
Jason?
Mason, what's up? You mentioned infrastructure.
Yeah.
And I know that comes under you guys' remit. Have you been to the Michael Priest Stadium about a year ago for celebrity softball? I think Earl, you were supposed to play. You guys show up. Typical you, but anyway.
Didn't know anything about it.
But in saying that, we're talking about growing our sports holistically, obviously, organizationally. But facilities, I say a lot of times our facilities are lacking. To go to that stadium named after somebody who meant so much to that sport, to get there, the PA systems, it was trash. The school board couldn't see the numbers properly. I mean, just different things like that. But we want people to excel in sports. Don't you think we need to put a lot more emphasis on our facilities? Because we saw that happen even with cricket a few years ago when a lot of our players were complaining, our top players complained about the state of our wickets. We saw that many years ago, people about football, with fields. What are we doing to go ahead and look at some of these facilities and get them up to par?
I mean, that's a very valid question, a very good question, because we all know to grow our sports, we have to have the infrastructure to support it. Now that goes into government's capital budget and the ability to finance sports and to grow it. I think there now has to be opportunities to create partnerships. When you see other countries that have developed infrastructure, is because they've created partnerships, private-public partnerships to invest in sports to grow it. Mm-hmm. I believe that's something that needs to start to be considered within our country as to creating partnerships for people to grow it. I'll give you an example of what I mean. I knew that when I traveled to Everton many years ago, Everton had so much land, but they had no budget to develop that land. Everton actually transferred that land to a developer that developed infrastructure for Everton to run their academy. So it was a partnership, and then Everton developed players that they sold on to clubs for $10 million. Wayne Rooney, So we need to now have that business conversation about infrastructure and how do we get to the point to develop it so that we can start to create international tournaments. Now, one of the things that are potential for a country like Bermuda is sports tourism. Sports tourism is a great potential for Bermuda, but you're absolutely right in saying that we need adequate infrastructure to be able to facilitate sports tourism. So again, that business conversation has to be had, and that's where the development of the sporting sectors, all the sporting bodies need to have that conversation and start to lobby for the improvements that are necessary. My job will be, once that is established, is to facilitate that process. Mm-hmm. But you're absolutely right in saying that our infrastructure needs to improve. And just on that matter, we're actively involved right now. We completed a survey of the public as to their opinion of sports. And the next stage of that survey is that we're going to move into rewriting the Bermuda National Sporting Policy. So the Bermuda National Sporting Policy is a 5-year policy, and it's due to expire at the end of this year. And we're now actively starting to do the research to rewrite that sporting policy. And there now has to be conversation, all right, how do we get to that vision? How do we build that framework to get to that vision? How do we actually fund that vision? So there is conversation amongst the national sporting bodies as to, do we have a sporting lottery in Bermuda? Do we have a lottery to be able to finance stuff? So in the UK, they finance their sports from a lottery. Now, that now requires change in legislation in Bermuda. But the sporting bodies need to organize themselves collectively to present their cases to government to be able to grow their actual sport. And also they have to tell the story as to what sports means to Bermuda.
Hold your next question, Jason. We're just going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, you can ask that follow-up question. We'll be right back.
We've already sung the praises of Welch's famous grape juice, so healthful and refreshing, a truly great family favorite. So with the festive season fast approaching, remember to stock up on Welch's sparkling juice cocktails, flavorful and thirst-quenching, another celebration of the greatness of the grape. The Welch's White, Red, and Rosé are all wonderful on their own, but for a special seasonal treat, try Welch's sparkling juice cocktail in festive punch recipes, garnished with cinnamon sticks or fresh cranberries. All non-alcoholic and also festive. Lindo's, why go anyplace else?
And welcome back. Jay, you had a follow-up question?
Well, Mitch, I'm glad you mentioned lottery, sports lottery. Earl, I don't know if you know, but Earl's been banging this drum for quite a while. Every new minister that comes in, we pose the question to, because I've seen it be successful, especially in Atlanta. Obviously, I was there for the '96 Olympics, and to see how they transformed that city. You mentioned partnerships. Obviously, a lot of partnerships were made, but also with the lottery. Now, what they've done with the lottery, obviously, just to be upfront about it, obviously, they made sure a good bulk of that money went towards addiction and anybody falling through the cracks. But it was also there to help out schools, that there was, again, the proper funding nationally. It was also there to help out public works, roads, bridges, and the likes, and also to help out sports. And that's when you was able to see now the investment after, say, 20-some odd years. They was able now, look how many sport franchises and teams they have out of Atlanta. That didn't happen overnight. That wasn't just, once upon a time, it was just a baseball city, as we all know. maybe a bit of basketball, which nobody went to. And the football games until Dion got there, it really wasn't much to go about. But to see with the soccer teams and all the other functions that happen there now, and I mean they're even talking about having Formula One there. Obviously, they have Road Atlanta for the motorcycle, but in saying all of that, that's the plans. It needs obviously some good finances to make that happen, some good capital to make it happen. I'm just glad that I'm hearing somebody now from the inside saying, look, this is something that we need to really take a serious look at.
Well, Jason, let me just speak to Atlanta really quickly. My education is in planning, and I was in school in the South in Atlanta, just outside Atlanta. And part of my interaction in my planning education, my academic education, was interacting with the development of Atlanta for sports and for the Olympics. So I went to school there from 91 to 96. So although I was having a really good time, I was learning some stuff, right? And I was learning, coming to your parties, right? I was having a really good time coming to your parties. Let's not tell my mom about that, right? But anyway, I saw Atlanta build our economy from sports.
Yeah.
Atlanta got the Olympics in '96 over New Orleans because there was an airport that they built in Atlanta. That's why they got the Olympics over New Orleans. And the platform of sports was the platform that they built the economy and that you see today. You are absolutely right. So Bermuda has this opportunity that we can use sports as a platform for sports tourism. Most of the places that I've been in the world, I've been because of sports. Some places I wouldn't have been in the world if it wasn't for sports. Who wouldn't want to come to Bermuda for sports tourism? So that's a conversation that we are now starting to have as we're learning how to develop sports. And sports is moving slowly in Bermuda from just the guy that goes down there and the athlete and he runs up and down to somebody that's very intellectual. And we're seeing the story of sports being told in different dynamics. I mean, we're seeing the Last Dance, the Chicago Bulls, how that the dynamics of sports, built their economy, and people like Michael Jordan changed the dynamics of the NBA. So this is something that we're learning, as a country, that we're starting to learn and start to be exposed of, and these are now conversations that we need to have to grow the dynamics. The other piece that we have to be aware of as a country, take a person like me, and maybe a lot of people, $30,000 out of my money is going away to put my son in a sports academy outside Bermuda. How many other people are doing this to develop their kids through sports, to be able to work in the professional world? So how much dollars that are leaving our economy in Bermuda because we're looking at sports as a way or different ways to develop? Why not figure out how we keep those dollars here in Bermuda? So I could tell so many stories. I could tell the story of my daughter that grew up in gymnastics, that's now a lawyer, but sports gave her the behavior. Sports actually gave her the behavior and the discipline to be able to be in a lawyer. But we need to tell these stories as national bodies, as youth in sports. We need to tell these stories so we become more relevant to our country's development. And that becomes our responsibility. And youth in sports, what we have done is implemented now a newsletter. So we tell that intimate story, not this story that, okay, Flora Duffy got this or Sean Goda did this, but how about the other intimate stories, what sports done for people? And those are the stories that we need to start telling so it becomes more relevant to our society.
Yeah. Maceo, just before we get to Craig Brown at the bottom of the hour, I want to ask you, how do you guys balance? Because you often hear sporting bodies talk about, we have a youth program, we have all these youngsters within this program. Are you guys really looking to ensure that if you're investing in these youngsters and developing them, that they are able to represent the country nationally? Because a lot of sports, in certain ways, in certain times, have athletes who can represent you up until a certain age through whatever requirements. But are you looking at it as, if we're developing this athlete, they could represent us at the 4 major festivals, which ultimately we want to see someone on the podium with a gold medal?
Yeah, the short answer to that is yes. The national bodies are also attached to our international body.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, let's speak of football. Football's attached to FIFA, and all the other national bodies. Sailing's attached to their national body.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, we want to be able to get our athletes to a percent that Bermuda's claim to fame has to in sports. We see the Florida Dolphins, we see the Nikki Wells, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we also have to build a sustainable domestic program that gets them to that place. I tell the story of that piece I tell the story of Jamaica. When I went to school in 91 to 96, I went to a black university and I saw the Jamaicans coming there for track and field. And I saw United States giving the Jamaican citizenship and they go back and run to the Olympics, run in the Olympics for the United States. I saw Jamaica fix that. Jamaica's got the fastest runners in the world up to 400 meters, men and women. I saw them fix it. So size wasn't the problem, wasn't it? They had programming. So as we start now talk about programming, we're now talking about long-term athletic development programs. How do we take a kid from 5 years old to 20 years old? How do we create pathways for him to keep growing? So that's the next stage of us interacting with the national bodies, and helping them get to that space where we have long-term athletic development programs that we can take our kids from 5 years old to 20 years old. And what does the pathway look like? And another big part of it is psychological training, emotional training. That used to be a bad word before. Now it's something that's definitely necessary. So we're young in the process of creating that environment, but that's what being small means, that we can do things with certain speed once we get to a level of total agreement amongst everybody.
All right. Well, I do want to thank you for your time, and we look forward to speaking with more people involved at the Ministry of Youth and Sport, at the Department of Youth and Sport, just to give us some insight as to how the department is helping to manage and navigate sports in Bermuda and what their policies and platforms are. Okay?
Well, thank you for the opportunity. Look forward to it.
All right.
Thanks a lot, Mace.
Okay.
When we come back, we'll be joined by Craig Brown.
Coconut oil has been popular here in Bermuda as a skin moisturizer for generations, but is sometimes avoided in cookery because of its unhealthy reputation. We've witnessed a change in attitudes as recent findings indicate that coconut oil is actually heart healthy and can enhance our immune systems, increase metabolism, energy and endurance, and improve digestion. Nutiva coconut oil is a superfood in its own right, and this month we're featuring Nutiva organic shortening made with organic coconut and red palm oils and also hemp seed oils. Lindo's, why go anyplace else?
And welcome back to this Wednesday, December the 2nd edition of Islands That Sports Show. Joining us now is Mr. Craig Brown, a man that wears many hats. Sun's down, so you don't have to look at the sun, brother. How you doing?
Good evening, Earl. How are you, Jason? Nice to see you.
Craig.
Jay, we have an inside joke of how do you get over jet lag. And Mr. Braun has told me that, well, you know what? I'm going to let you explain it, Craig, because
I'm serious.
To see how far you're going to get with this story. So,
Juggler, he does this.
When we were in Barranquilla with the CAC games, we were chatting, and Earl was like, we were talking about how we have so many athletes now living overseas, something that Macy was talking about, and you guys talked about on the show before. With the Football Association, we bring a lot of guys over from the UK. And we have a very short time in the international window to get them acclimated to both the temperature as well as the time zone. So we encourage them to, and we get up before the sun rises, at the sunrise over in Florida. So because the body and the brain can pick up the different types of sunlight. So to reset the circadian rhythm, to get their sleep patterns back. And as you can imagine, Earl works many hours in the night. So when he heard that, he was like, really, you have to get up with the rising sun? So I'm like, our running joke from now on has been, how you doing, mate? Yeah, don't worry. What time do you need me? Okay, yeah, the sun's going down, or the sun will be coming up. So, but we do a circadian reset for all the players coming up, and we go from there. And if individuals have seen also the spinning sessions follow that. So we go for a walk, and then we'll go into the gym, get the heart rate up about 15, 20 minutes, flush out the jet lag, then do a stretch session, and head into breakfast. So that's where that comes from.
All right. Well, we'll talk about that later.
We started doing it in Dubai with the cricket team a long, long time ago, but it proved a bit more challenging over there with the long-term flights. But it's part of the parcel of what we have to do in international sport to make those 1% differences. So.
Yeah. Well, Craig, I spoke to you last week because I knew I was having Brian Hall, the CONCACAF head of refereeing, on Monday to discuss a topic that's been around for quite some time, and that's the concussions during sports. And I know a lot of people talk about just football, but there are many contact sports that fall under this remit. I wanted to talk to you as being someone on island in the field of because you're well diverse, you and your organization are well diverse, and I see you with multiple different sporting bodies. But having people who can, first of all, detect whether or not someone is concussed during a sporting event. How important is it to have these people on site to be able to do the basic tests to determine whether or not that person is concussed and is unsafe to go back on the field of play, no matter what sport it is?
Well, that's a good point. I mean, one of the biggest issues we have in Bermuda, I think, especially in COVID times, is having enough first aid or medically qualified people around the bench. There's not a lot of us going around working in sport, but when you go deeper into what is pitch side trauma and management look like, that's a whole different kettle of fish. That's not just a first aider that knows how to use a defib. So there is a lot of training that has to go into that. There are special postgraduate courses. I think on the island, there's probably a handful of us in the physiotherapy profession and one or two in the EMTs, as well as the ER doctors that have helped out on pitch side before. So it is a specialized area to understand and how to assess the concussion. But really, the pitch side part is only one bit of it. There's a lot of the work is done away from the field, away from the game, on baseline, establishing a baseline with the team and the players. At Apex, we do a lot of work with a lot of the clubs as well as the governing bodies. And we try and get that in as part of preseason. We're trying to get that baseline assessment. So should something occur, we educate some of the pitch side staff that the club may have and then give them some checklists. So at least they're having some type of education in there. I know with the Bermuda Olympic Association, where I sit at the medical commission, just prior to COVID, we were flying the guy in that does for the Cardiff Stadium in Wales, and he was going to bring and do a pitch side sports trauma course specifically for the physiotherapists to get them up to world level 2, which is what you're required to do in rugby. And so that's what we had in plan. Obviously, COVID put an end to that, but hopefully that Olympic Solidarity funding will come back so we can get more people trained, so we can get better education out there. It's very, very important to get that understanding for administrators as well, and parents and all the stakeholders.
Yeah, you indicated having someone come in. How long, let's go back, if COVID wouldn't have happened, how long was that course going to be, and was it open to anybody involved with a club that needs to be given a basic kind of level of training of sorts?
So we had we had it tiered out. We had one that was very medically orientated for people that had medical background, healthcare regulatory individuals, physiotherapists, doctors, and so forth. And then we had another one just for first aid pitch side individuals and stakeholders. So we had a sort of tiered system so people could get to where we wanted them to be, because it's very important to have a standardized operating system across the national governing bodies to protect the athletes. And a lot of the problem with concussion thing is based on things you cannot see at the outset. And you have to really be understanding to know what to look for. And if you don't understand what to look for, take away the pressure of trying to make a decision under a game time situation, a lot on the line. In domestic is still just as much as you are at international. Pressure is pressure, internal and external. So from that perspective, we have to have that grounding of which to go back to make an informed decision to protect the athlete. Yeah.
When you see, you've been on the sideline, various sports and so forth, but when you see like a clash of heads, when you're running out to ascertain what the damage is done, what goes through your mind? Because obviously you've seen a collision, and you've got to get from point A to point B that might take you 10 seconds to do so. What is going through your mind as you're making your way out there?
It depends on what sport it is. I mean, again, it's like knowing the intricacies of the sport. So, for example, football, while we talk about if there's a head injury or somebody collapses with nobody around them, that we should be able to enter the field without a referee. Some referees do hold us up, so to speak. They have to go down and assess the situation. Normally, we would just enter the field of play and just get there, just because, especially if someone drops and nobody's around them and there isn't a collision. Sudden cardiac death, for example, is a big risk factor, and time is of the essence there. On a head injury, we have to sometimes wait for the assistant referee or somebody to allow us to access the field. Whereas in rugby, you can enter around the back of the play and come in and see an athlete. So each sport has its own variances, but understanding that's important. But what you're doing is you're running in and you're assessing the area. You're seeing what's happening. You're seeing the reaction of the players around them, because normally you can see by their reaction that something is serious, if the person is knocked out, and so forth. So we look at the recent Premier head collision with Raul Jimenez. Obviously, not somebody we like in Bermuda right now after Mexico game last year. But, when we look at that, the players' reaction gave it all. They knew it was something serious, both by the reaction with David Luiz and also Raul Jimenez. So when you look at the components, they are very, very serious. You can start to pick that up as you're starting to get to the area. And then when you're there, you're really just making sure the area is clear, check the athlete, obviously checking their vital signs, going through your ABCs and checking things like that, and then start to stabilize the head. If it's a head injury or potential head injury, you're stabilizing the neck, because you can't rule it out because you don't know exactly what's going on. So, and that's the other thing, is having the right equipment is paramount. And that's part of the reason the BOA, we highlighted that we wanted to get people trained so we can start to get better equipment, spinal boards, proper collars, airway management training, things of that nature that can help save somebody's life, and go from there.
Jason?
Well, Craig, you mentioned education. I've seen the NFL, I want to say, forced to get into this because of the CTE, learning more about CTE because of the past players, not only dying, but also suing the league. For a long time, they turned a blind eye to it, and you see now they are pulling players left, right, and center for any hits. They take them under the tent and the whole nine. So let's switch now to Bermuda and look at the kids. Obviously, there's a lack of resources on a professional level up here or a senior level. But let's go back to the youth level, where we see kids, number one, who has obviously the brain is not fully developed, getting in clashes. For a parent, what are some of the signs or symptoms that they can look out for? Because it's paramount for them to even, sometimes you got to, like all athletes, sometimes you got to save the athlete from themselves. They got to get back into it. But not knowing the ramifications of a good head, once upon a time, we just gave some smelling salts to get back out there.
Well, I mean, that's what I alluded to earlier when you talk about education. I mean, the first thing is understanding that in a perfect world, and let's start from 35,000 feet, we're getting the child assessed. We're getting the baseline. So, the Berlin consensus back in 2016, I believe, helped build the platform for what is now the SCAT5, and a lot of different type of markers out there. As you mentioned, in the NFL, it's huge in the U.S. In high school level, everybody getting tested prior to the season is standardized there, as it is now in the UK. It's still behind there in football, but slightly, but it's coming forward, progressing. So the baseline is important. Now, I just had a recent conversation this week about care pathways for concussion management and stuff. Get into a whole different level about being able to do that. But ultimately speaking, that's the first part. But after that, it's really understanding what are the symptoms. And children, it's things like there's 22 symptoms in the SCAT test that we test as part of aftercare in the first 24 to 48 hours. So when we look at that, we give at Apex, we have it automated. So we send it to somebody and they fill it out every day and email it back to us. So we're checking on everybody that anybody comes through with a suspected concussion. So with 22 marked out of 6, you have a potential of 132 symptoms and a severity score. Okay, so that's what you're looking for. And then as we go through that, we start to look at what type of symptoms are presenting. For a child, you may start to say difficulty concentrating, difficulty remembering. They may be tired, they may have pressure in their head, may have some neck pain. They may be more irritable. They may not be motivated. There's different symptoms that parents can look out for. Outside of things like, a headache and a blurry vision or balance problems, those are the things that stand out. And in the classroom, teachers also have a role to play. They see the child every day. They know how the child interacts. So teachers also have a way of communicating back to the parent, hey, did something happen on the weekend? It doesn't seem quite right. He or she not concentrating. So all those factors come into it. And that's part of the next stage of aftercare, the graduated return to sport/activity. Mm-hmm. And crikey, if anybody's had a headache the day after of anything, trying to concentrate on anything of any stature can be a bit of a challenge. So obviously for a child in the classroom doing homework or doing anything like that, their output may not be as good for their thinking component, because obviously the heads haven't come under trauma.
Okay. All right. So would you recommend that more people from various sporting bodies get involved, if that's what you're kind of designed to do for your team, be the medic or be that person, to get some more basic training in well, you're not going to be a doctor, so but there are some basic tests you can do right there on site to determine whether or not this person needs further assessment, or they can actually enter back into the match?
I think from a simple point of view, the FA has it as part of the slogan, the Scottish FA also, they say, if in doubt, sit them out. Mm-hmm. So if you're actually asking that question to yourself, hey, do they have anything? Send them to somebody that's more qualified. That's the simplest way of doing it. It's better to err on the side of caution as opposed to anything else. I think in the medical profession, one of the biggest things that we have to abide by is understanding your scope of practice, your limitations. And, we all may want to think we're a doctor and never forget the TV show, The Pretender, could be today, but it's not going to be the case for that. You think about someone's life, somebody's health. There's a young lady in Bermuda that suffered 2 or 3 concussions and was misdiagnosed. She can't play football again. And we don't have a big pool of talent to pick from. So, we want to make sure we're not missing things and not managing it correctly from the outset. That's very, very important. So if in doubt, sit them out, go get someone else to look at them.
All right. Well, I do want to thank you very much for your time, Mr. Brown. Appreciate you discussing this. And there are various other topics I want to bring you back to discuss. Such as recovery from injury, recovery from matches, and prior to matches, how people prepare or should be preparing themselves. Especially, we do a lot at the senior level, but we need to start making sure that we do this at a young level, because then they learn how to do these things, and it becomes a norm as opposed to a learning thing as they get older.
Definitely. I'm more than happy to come back. Maceo started talking about it. I'm a big advocate of the long-term athlete development model, and Jason mentioned education. The more we can educate people and build pathways that people are doing the right thing at the earlier stage, we don't have to worry about it at the national level. Things like the circadian rhythm and getting up for the sun will become normal.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much.
All right, guys. Have a good evening. Thanks a lot.
Caribbean Report after this message from our sponsor.
Every resident of Bermuda deserves to spend their final days with dignity. They also deserve access to privacy for themselves and their loved ones. Although Agape House has lovingly wrapped its arms around thousands of patients and their families, it can no longer meet the needs of our community. There is an urgent need for a new facility, and we need your help to make that happen. Donate today by going to agiftforagape.com or calling 232-0859. Help give Agape House a new home. Lindo's, why go anyplace else?
is Vernon Springer from Fast Sports Media for Island Stats in Bermuda. And as you know, the Antigua and Barbuda Cricket Association is getting ready for 10-10 competition, which will kick off at the Silver-Rated Stadium on Saturday. There will be 10-night games, which will include 9 clubs plus the combined schools team, who will be participating in a championship. And this will be the first of the kind that will close out the year for cricket in Antigua and Barbuda. A number of players are expected to be on show, which would include the likes of Devon Thomas, some of the other local players, Elroy Francis, Damari Benter, Kelvin Pittman. So quite some exciting times. There will also be some ladies who will be participating in the championship. Shanisha Brittany Hector, the first women's player from Antigua and Barbuda and the Leeward Islands to play for the West Indies women team, along with Amanda Edwards. So a lot of the other females will be participating in this 10-10 competition, which, like I said, kicks off at the Silver-Rated Stadium starting on Saturday. In terms of cricket taking place, there's the Nevis Cricket Association T20 League, which is up and running, and that is very exciting as we speak. A lot of matches are played at the El Camino Willett Park, which is formerly known as the Grove Park in Nevis. So you have a lot of the franchise players like the Leeward Islands captain Jamal Hamilton, Kyron Powell, Keslan Archibald, Jeremiah Louis, Akeem Saunders. All those guys are playing in the T20 League. The focus now for the Leeward Islands Cricket Board will be the training camp, which will be coming up for the West Indies Super 50. The West Indies proposed Super 50 is expected to take place in February in 2021. You rightly said that the West Indies team went down and lost the series to New Zealand. We have heard some real strong words coming from the West Indies captain, Kyron Pollard. And he sent a message loud and clear to these guys. If you want to be in this dressing room, your attitude is going to have to change. You're going to have to be able to put on your game face. And so he sent a strong message, whether you play, you could just reach to the lines. It didn't matter whether you were playing in the IPL, whether you're playing in the Big Bash, whether you're playing in the Caribbean League, whether you're a superstar in your franchise or whatever. When you put on that maroon to come and represent the West Indies and you're not up to par and you're not committed, Kyron Pollard, as the captain, has decided that he's going to send a message to the selectors, and he sent a message to that dressing room. And this is somebody who is a customer winning. And if you're not a customer winning, then you can't really understand what the captain is talking about. So he wants to change that culture. So I wish him all the best. I also want to wish the test team all the best. And I also want to wish the A team all the best. There's some exciting players. I see that they're taking a long time to announce the captain. But in fairness, I think that Nkrumah Bonner should be the guy who should be going out there and leading the team along with Joshua De Silva. I think those two are potential leaders. Bonner would have captained the Leeward Islands franchise already, so he has some form. He's been around the CCC setup also as a leader, and I think he should be identified as one of the players to captain the team. So we hope that that 18 tour will go well for people like Nicholas Boran and company. Let's say congratulations also to the West Indies Test captain Jason Holder, who will be playing in the Big Bash League. So he'll join Carlos Brathwaite. He'll also join Nicholas Puran. And so that's more or less. Kima Paul is also going to the Big Bash. So that gives us a little scope in terms of some players getting an opportunity to go out there. The bowling is a major concern for the West Indies in the T20 format. I thought Keswick Williams was way below par, and I really, when you look around at Romaro Shepherd, based on his own CPL form, should have started even before a Keswick Williams. But we'll wait and see and look and see in terms of what is going to be happening. We have the Super 50 coming up in February. There most likely will be some new stars coming through. Some of the test players will not be available for that Super 50, so that's going to be another discussion in terms of they get an opportunity to play. Football is alive in St. Kitts and Nevis. Vibrantly, it's been alive even around some of the other islands. I know cricket is playing in St. Martin, playing in Anguilla, nothing in BVI. So sporting-wise, we can see in terms of what's happening. I sent you something just to let you know that the Islands Cup Open, this is a franchise tournament that is going to be kicking off in August 2021. And so you have the national hero of Antigua and Barbados, Vivian Isaac Alexander Richards, being named as the ambassador for that Island Cup Open. Now, that's a championship which has been brewing for some time, and it's got a title slang, and you'll be hearing from me more on the Island Cup Open as the weeks go on. There's a special Zoom meeting coming up with stakeholders over the next couple of days. I'll be able to send you the link, and so folks in Bermuda can be able to join in and understand what's going to be happening. This is even going to be bigger than the Caribbean Premier League. So I promise you that in 2021, we have some exciting times for Caribbean footballers who will be getting an opportunity to play in a franchise tournament. So in terms of sports, I think maybe I might have covered it in most ways. In terms of, I can't give you everything, but I know if you follow online, you get a track in terms of what is going to be going on. So Earl, respect to you. God bless you. Let me say good day to all the folks in Bermuda. I know you've got some cricket action also taking place. But this is Vernon Springer from Vast Sports Media, right here in St. John's, Antigua and Barbuda. As we prepare for Christmas, we want to say to everybody that stay safe, follow the protocols, and the only thing maybe that can be able to fight this COVID is sports.
Hi, Earl. It's always so good to hear from you. Everybody, my side is doing well. My family is doing great. I am doing great. I hope you are too, especially your boys, as we head into this Christmas season. But you're perfectly correct in saying that Barbados did not have our historic race day as expected, much to the disappointment of many horse racing fans here on the island. And it was set for a very special day, Independence Day celebrations. And unfortunately, the rain had the final say. Over the past 2 months, we've been having some really temperamental weather here in Barbados that has caused lots of rainfall at various points. And leading up to the race day, the track at the Garrison Savannah was actually waterlogged and therefore really not conducive to racing. And the decision was taken very late on the night before racing, which would have been Sunday night, that therefore we'll have to postpone the event, not cancel, postpone it. So we're still waiting to see when the Barbados Turf Club will make that decision as to when we will have our first historic race night. It was named the Sir David Seal Race Night after our most decorated horse race, that should be race horse owner, Sir David Seal. So David Seal actually has the most Gold Cups under his belt here in Barbados as a trainer and owner. So therefore, it was most fitting that the race night really belonged to him, and he has really done a lot for the sport here in Barbados for his development over the years, and to have his name behind the race day was very, very important. And as I said, it's not canceled, it's postponed, so we're just sitting with bated breath to see exactly when we'll have that historic race night. Nevertheless, over the weekend, we had the Squash Masters Nationals completed. And at the end of it all, Jada Smith Padmore and Kamal Cumberbatch were crowned the women and men's senior national champions in squash. So that was completed. We also had the conclusion of the Mud Dogs Rally Cross year of 2020. That should be 2020 season. And it came to an end with the Rallycross event, the final Rallycross event for the Mud Dogs. This is off-road racing we're speaking about. So you find these guys traversing through arcane fields and down through our valleys and hills here in Barbados. No, well, I said hills and not mountains. And that came to an end. And speaking about being in the fast lane, this weekend, the final event is set. It will be the Winter Rally for the Barbados Rally Club. This is now the racing on the road racing, rally stages racing, and that will bring the curtain down on their 2020 season as well. And coming to an end is also volleyball. The men's title has already been claimed. This is the league title by the Deacons Club, one of the perennial winners of volleyball here in Barbados, and they maintained their top class performance again in 2020, whereas the fight is still on for the female title, which should be concluded by this weekend. So of course, as happens every year, is the winding down of the sporting season, but we still have some action going here in Barbados nevertheless. And I look forward to hearing from you guys again next week. I hope all is well over there in Bermuda, and I send my love and blessings from Barbados.
Well, there you have it, Jabba. Overseas report as Vernon was saying, that the West Indies, they've got to sort some things out. But they're not the only ones in cricket. I mean, we have our problems as well. And of course, it was unfortunate for Barbados that first night of horse racing was postponed due to inclement weather. But there's still a lot going on.
Yeah. Well, I was sort of upset, Earl, because I was all hyped up for the start of the netball season. You got me so excited last week. As you know, it's being postponed to the new year.
Mm-hmm.
Look forward to that. COVID, man, it's this week has been hard. I mean, I've looked at a lot of professional teams struggle with it. Even an NFL game had to be played today, which was supposed to have been played last week.
Right.
Been canceled twice. And then having I saw an NFL team normally have 3 quarterbacks. None of them could play. It's like, what you mean? And the game goes on. And then also look at Lewis Hamilton, who's basically wrapped everything in Formula One. He's come down with it. So it's still rampant across the world. And I just think it's something that we're going to have to get used to for a little while and take all the precautions and be careful, because as much as we want our sports to carry on, but we also want to make sure that we're doing it in a safely manner.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, we're going to have to learn how to deal with it, have to learn how to, just like many other major, what I want to call them, pandemics or even illnesses that have come before this. It's something that we just have to learn how to deal with and take all the precautions that we can, because it's something you can't see. And I just think we need to trust the people who are giving us the information, who have the training to give us the information, to follow the lead and just do as kindly as asked, to follow whatever instructions we're given.
That's the hardest part right now, Earl, because we're living in an age of information, and we're getting a lot of times a lot of conflicting information, and where do you get that, that source? Where's that source that you can really rely on? And that's the problem. I just want to say thank you for today for this show, especially for having Craig Brown on, because that issue has been a very touchy issue. That's been almost a taboo issue. Nobody really wants to speak about that issue.
Mm-hmm.
Not only in sports, but on an island where we have a lot of bike accidents.
Yeah.
I know friends who've had bike accidents who haven't been the same since. And we're probably 20 or 30 years ago. Whether the treatment they could have gotten earlier, maybe could have helped them or not, we don't know. I mean, that's something that we're all learning as we go through education. I remember going through having my accident many years ago, when the MRI was just coming about. Look what it is now. They use it as it's quite normal now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just the information of it. So to keep having these talks, I think we need to have more talks like this, because of the fact that I've learned so much over the last 30 odd years just dealing with what I've had to deal with. And then when you talk about a head trauma, a lot of times when a head, especially for brain or the stem or your spinal cord, has been severed or interrupted, as they may say. Sometimes it says, or even swelling on the brain, sometimes you don't really know the effects of it or the true effects of it for like 2 years later when the swelling actually goes down. So you might think that you might be in the clear, when 2 years from now, you could be suffering from some other things and not realize it was from a bike accident, it was from a flash of heads, it was from this hard tackle, it was from whatever. I mean,
any trauma incident.
You hit the go. I mean, so many things that it can happen. But that trauma incident, if it's not recognized, and that's why I was saying for I think the education really we got to get some education to the young coaches, to our parents, because that child's brain is still growing.
Right.
And that's going to be important.
I did message Craig, and I said in the new year, we're going to have him back for a longer period, an extended period of time, because it's got to be, it's vital that we acknowledge the injury part at a young age to get the help that they need as they grow, even preparing and like I said, the post match warm down, stretching, as important as it is, they have to learn it whilst they're young, so it becomes a norm as they get older. So
I just want to just touch back on some of those NFL stories. You see these guys suffer CTE, and then they end up ending their life or committing suicide or shooting somebody or something, and the public just looks at that, how their life ended, not realizing what caused all of this.
right.
So not just physically what you can actually see, but also mentally, the mental effects on a lot of our players, a lot of our athletes, going through after a hit or after a knock. And these are things that is like you can't see it, so it's so hard to detect.
Right.
But I think the more we speak about it, more information comes to us, and we can get it out. I think it will be better.
I remember back in the day, Jay, when we would see an NFL player or a baseball player that would do harm to themselves, we all used to put it down to, oh well, they're off their steroids.
Yeah.
Because that's what we were told. That's what we believed that's what it was. So we tended to use that as the excuse, not knowing that that's a form of the trauma that some of these athletes have had in their life, and we might not have seen the actual physical trauma happen, but they've probably had it. And now that they're finished playing, the mind starts to drift. You don't know what's going on within the mind because you can't see it.
Can't see it.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for your time. Any parting words? I know you got some parting words. You always got a left jab and then a right cross. So give it to me.
I'm glad Maceo came on to try to keep you in check because I'm seeing him. You're getting wiped up, man. Come on, Earl. You got to get better.
I'm behind by 2.
Yeah. You're behind. That's my point. You're behind.
Listen, the race needs a leader and followers. It needs a leader and I didn't say the race was over. I said
you're allowing them to lead you right now? That's what you're saying?
Man, they set the pace, man. They set the pace.
So you're giving them a head start? That's what you're saying?
No, I didn't say a head start. I said I'm allowing them to set the pace.
You're picking some odd games so they can be ahead of you? That's what you're saying?
Listen.
I want to get it out of your mouth because,
all about the second half of the season, cousin.
Okay, buddy.
When the hammer drops, watch out.
Well, we did that for about 3 years in a row, and that hammer just never came. So I don't know what hammer you're talking about.
I had to let you be on something.
All 3 years? I mean, geez, I got tired. I got promised a trophy. I got promised a dinner. I got promised so many things.
I had to let you win something. You kept picking Patrick.
Hey, you won.
Well, and I'll go back and tell you, I helped them to win the season because I was going against them and they wanted to prove me wrong week in and week out. So I helped them win the league.
Takes them out of the league. I tell you.
All right, partner. Huh?
Carry to next week.
Yeah. We'll be here again next week, Wednesday, 8 p.m. for the Island Stats Sports Show. So do enjoy the rest of your night, all. Night, Jake.
Good night.